the participants for tomorrow's presentation contest. Please, after today's event at 6, please let's assemble in the cafeteria near the conference hall. Thank you. It's information for all the participants. There will be provided lots of crucially important information about the tomorrow's contest. Thank you.
Distinguished representatives, please take your seats. So I declare the second plenary session open, and I give the floor to the Director General.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. This afternoon's meeting, we have some additional briefings to be provided to you for your consideration. And without further ado, I turn the briefing over to our colleagues from the Secretariat. You may explain a little more your specific place. Thank you.
Thank you, Director General. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Robert Verzi. I'm working in the IDC as a radionuclide officer. And as mentioned yesterday in the briefing from the director, we were waiting for some radionuclide detections that may be associated with the event from 21st of May. And in fact, overnight, a spectrum arrived from a station in the vicinity of Atlantis, and we do have some detections of two xenon isotopes. What I show here is the very last samples of the last 2 days of the station AOX04, where we see that we had the last sample that came in just this morning at 1 o'clock. We have two isotopes, two xenon isotopes in the sample. Very clear signal of xenon 133 in the range of 50 millibecquerels per cubic meter, but also some amounts of xenon 131M. It's not a very prominent amount of xenon 131M, but it is visible in the data. The spectrum itself has been reviewed by an analyst already, and I was very grateful for them to be very quick with the review, to provide you all the reviewed analysis already. Here, just show a plot of the actual data. We have a very clear xenon 133 signal, and the state of health data for all the measurement system indicated there were no problems at the station during the preparation of the sample and also during the measurement of the sample. I must also note that measurements of particulate sample has not been completed. They are still in progress due to the different cycle of the noble gas systems and the particulate systems. We did look at preliminary results, and they did not show any relevant nuclides so far. Just a quick recap on about this categorization of this noble gas sample. So we categorized it as level C, which means there is radioxenon in the sample at levels that are not normal for that station. However, this station has a history of xenon 133 detections. Here we see the history of the last year. We see every dot is xenon 133 detection, and the difference between the colors is that the blue ones are normal for that station, and the red ones are actually higher than the average seen at the station. So that's what qualifies these samples then as a level C. And the last sample here is the sample that we focus today. If you look at the last months, so that's now for the May, all the samples from May, we see there are still some xenon detections and also some xenon detections at higher levels, qualifying them for level C samplers. If we now look at the ATM products, I will hand over to my colleague Pierre to explain the ATM results.
Okay, what we see on those charts are the area where a release would explain what was detected. So the top one detection minus 1 day, if the release was within that area, within that time frame, the last 24 hours, then it would have contributed to the sample that Robert just described. The second one is the same, except looking for 2 days. So just a little word about the meaning of this. So the station AUX is this one. There is a medical facility called in this slide SDSMF, or medical facility, and there is the mining site. So if the release was happened in the last 24 hours, only the medical facility could explain it. If it happened longer than that, 2 days, you see, it could also be from the mining site. And if, of course, if you go back 3 days, then it is clearly a possibility. So those slides show that the two sources could contribute to the detection at AUX04. And now what we will see, not now, in a few minutes.
Comes a little bit late. I want now to provide you some more information about the Xenon 131M and Xenon 133. Both are fission products that are directly produced in a nuclear fission, and if one plots then the amount of activity that is measurable after their creation, we have a kind of time sequence, and you see such curves over time frames up to 60, 70 days. So you can see that the activities of these two nuclides over time changes, which means that the ratio from one nuclide to the other is changing. And due to this ratio, or when measuring this ratio, one can get some information about the time of the event when these two nuclides, or when these nuclides were created. However, you can also already say that Xenon 131M and Xenon 133 is, as we know, is produced in medical isotopes productions as well, and also in ratios very similar, because the process in producing especially iodine, which is a medical isotope, will also produce Xenon 131M. So we have these two, or this process where we create Xenon 131M and Xenon 133 also in the production of nuclear medicine. If we now look into the actual ratio of this measurement, and assuming now or having now an hypothesis of that the material was produced purely out of plutonium-239 or of uranium-235 as a target in a reactor, which is usually the target material for medical isotope production. The differences are not very, very big at these time scales for the measurements we take, and also due to the rather high uncertainty in the Xenon 131. Of course, the ratio also becomes has a higher uncertainty, which results then in a rather high uncertainty for what we call the zero time, which reflects the date of creation of this material. And taking now our measurement data, we can estimate a measurement or a date of creation on 20th of May at around 8 o'clock, or if it's based on any reactor, it's a little bit earlier. But of note is, of course, there is an uncertainty related to this, which brings then both scenarios into the time of the seismic event. If we now go to and look now, assuming this scenario, either release from the site of the seismic event or of the medical isotope production, you can then see, and Pierre can explain what we actually see.
So this is a forward simulation showing for two stations, the mining site here and the medical facility here. So those are valid at the same time. And for the mining site, again, it was assumed a short release, 2 hours following the May 21 shock. And for the medical facility, it is assumed a continuous release, more typical with this type of installation. But what is important to realize is that at one point over the IMS station, the two plumes from the two different sites coincide. So at this point, it is not possible to say, is it from the mining site or is it from the medical facility? And right here, you look at this. So the one in the darker colors here is the plume as simulated from the mining site, and the lighter colors, the plume from the medical facility. And of course, you can notice that they overlay quite well over our IMS station.
Okay. So with that, we can actually sum up all the facts about the radionuclide detection. So we had the detection of noble gas in AOX04, which was among the highest seen at that station. Both xenon-133 and 131M were detected. The xenon-133 detection is evident and accurate. The xenon-131 concentration has around 90% measurement uncertainty, but it's still, the detection is still 2 times about the limit which would declare a detection. The isotopic ratio indicates that the fission occurred approximately 7 days ago, however, with an uncertainty of about 3 days. And the date of fission does not differ too much between using plutonium-239 as a source or uranium-235 as a source in a reactor. For the ATM?
So again, looking at the field of regards, looking at the forward modeling, from the ATM point of view, there is no way to be absolutely sure that it is from the mining site or the medical facility, because at one point they overlay quite well, so it makes the plume undistinguishable from one source or the other. So an operational release from any medical nuclear facility could possibly explain the dose detection too. So, and we are waiting for more observation before making more definite answers.
Thank you.
I thank the technical experts for providing additional information. At this moment, if you have any questions to our experts, please raise your country. Yes, Costa Rica.
If we could go back to slide 2 for the Secretariat, please. You said that the detection limits were near zero. Did I understand that correctly? For one of the elements, you said the detection limits were near zero?
Xenon-131M was near to the detection limit, so we have 0.11 with an uncertainty of 0.10, and the detection limit is about 0.05.
Is that a calibration issue with the gas chromatography mass spec? In other words, did you reconcile whether or not that near zero could be a calibration issue?
The data have been reviewed very carefully, taken into account all the calibration information, including the daily QC spectrum. They don't indicate any problems at the station.
Thank you.
Lithuania.
Good afternoon. Besides the medical facility, are there any other locations that could have emitted the Xenon 133 or Xenon 131 during that time period that you identified, if the release was during the -2 time period? Thank you.
The information we have about Atlantis is that there is one research reactor which is producing medical isotopes, and we are not aware of any other nuclear installations that produce fission products.
Oh, Netherlands.
Thank you very much. Could we kindly see again slide number 5, please? So thank you for that. I was wondering, this graph, it shows us that in the past there have been a lot of abnormal limits, if I understood this correctly. So could you elaborate a little bit more, maybe why are there so high abnormal limits in the past years? So how come that the medical facility has such high emissions? And also, if I may, if there were no seismic indications that there was an unusual event in Australia, would you, the technical secretariat, just based on the concentration of Xenon 133, have raised like alarm or convened this meeting? Thank you.
Yeah, I'll refer to you.
Thank you. Just one question about or one observation about your question. The Secretariat releases information that it acquires or that it has processed on a regular basis to all of the parties to the treaty, especially the analytical products. If states have also asked to have the raw data, they are also provided that data on a routine basis. But it is not the role of the Secretariat to call specific attention to a specific event. That would be something that would be initiated by a state party. Perhaps my colleagues would want to add a little bit more on the technical side.
Yes, I can, just on providing further explanation on the graph and the data we see. As I mentioned, the red points are measurements which are abnormal for that site. Mentioned we see Xenon 133 regularly at that site because there is medical isotope production not far away. So that's very regular. We see it in other stations in other countries as well. The discrimination between what is a level B or what is abnormal or what is normal for a station follows a mathematical algorithm taking into account the history of the station, the last year, the data from the last year with an interquartile range, average, and then the limit is established for each individual sample. So it is not uncommon that we have such distributions. and we see it on other stations as well.
Democratic Republic of Congo.
Thank you very much. Although the red one are man-made, as you said, it could be from the medical facilities or mining, which is just close to that area. Still, these man-made or the red dot are below the abnormal limit. Am I right?
No. So xenon, radioactive xenon, is only produced by fission, so not by any mining activity. The red dots are above the abnormal limit, so it's all the points above the red line are considered as not normal for this particular station. So it's everything above the line is abnormal.
Equilibrium, you have the floor.
Thank you. Equilibria, I would just like to ask about the status of this research reactor, if you have any information on that. Because one could assume that if there was a seismic event in the region, that a nuclear research reactor would be manually or automatically shut down in such an event. So I'd just like to hear some on that. Thank you.
Well, I'll ask the representatives of Atlantis to respond. If you need more time. Okay. If there are no any other questions, okay. Jordan, right?
Thank you. Referring to page 5, where we are right now, I see that the current red dot is not that much higher compared to dots seen in 2025, November and February. If you could go to the slide where there is the joint ATM simulation of the two sources. Yes, perfect, thank you. Even the close-up would be... Yeah. So if there was an explosion at the mining site, I would expect a significantly higher xenon-133 concentration because the medical facility emits relatively lower level compared to what comes from the middle of the island. Am I correct? Thank you.
So it is a matter of dilution factor. The point is that the medical facility is quite close. I don't know, something like in the order of 100 kilometers, while the mining site is probably 500-600 kilometers. So we expect for such a situation, the dilution factor to be something in the order of 1,000 less than from the site. So that would explain the difference.
I'll ask Atlantis to provide a response. Okay.
So to the question of the Republic of Equilibria, we certainly have procedures for the shutdown of the reactor in case of an earthquake or another catastrophe. At the moment, our open pool light water reactor that is located at the facility of a research stability has a very, very low production of uranium due to the earthquake. I think.
Thank you. For India, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. I would like to ask a question to the representative of Atlantis, if I may. If there were an accident or the extra emission of the xenon in the medical radiator facility, maybe the Atlantis could provide us with the comment, did this event, I mean the accident on the nuclear facility, took place or not?
Yes. Will you respond?
I'm sorry, could we ask our colleague to repeat that question?
So, due to the research of the representative of the technical secretariat, they assumed that there could be a accident on the nuclear facility which led to the emission of the xenon. So, can you prove that this accident really took place?
In response to the comment by our colleague from India, I think that the presentation showed that detection of these xenon isotopes in the atmosphere is normal based on normal functional operation of the research reactor. So we are not claiming at this time that there was a catastrophe at the reactor that added to additional xenon isotopes in the atmosphere.
Thank you. Representative of Lithuania.
Yes, one more question about this map, the diagram. The different colors, do they represent different concentrations? And if so, what kind of scale or what is the differentiation between each color? I see the scale, but I'm unsure as to what it actually represents.
Yeah, the different colors, the color scheme is the same for the two of them, except that to make the distinction between the two plumes, the plume from the medical facility is lighter colors. So over the IMS station, we don't see really the concentration, the dilution factor, I should say, for the IMS station because the plume from the mining site is darker. Yeah. So it is the dilution factor. So the blue to yellow scale is somewhere in the order to 10 minus 15, 10 to minus 16.
Thank you for this clarification. It's my understanding that Equilibria has some intervention.
Thank you. I would just like to ask for some more clarification from our colleagues from Atlantis, because I believe that my question was not addressed precisely. My question was about whether the research reactor was shut down during the seismic event to prevent some sort of catastrophe happening there. If I didn't hear the answer, then that's my fault. I apologize. Thank you.
Please go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, to the colleagues of Calibria, the research reactor has not been shut down because it was far away of the place of the location where the earthquake situation has been.
So, if there are no any other questions, in light of the new, Netherlands, you have a follow-up question?
Yes, I would like just some clarifications about the correspondence in terms of use of the different lexic, because we saw that in the event screening, level 1 and 2 are categorized like natural occurring radioactivities, and level 3 is mandate radioactivities typical at a station, and level 4 is carefully analyzed, right? And at the slide number 5, I would like to know actually with the level 1, 2, 3, 4, which is corresponding to the level C and to the level B.
Yeah, please, you have the floor.
In analyzing or in reviewing radionuclide data, we differentiate between data from particulate systems and data from noble gas systems. Data from particulate systems are categorized in a scheme that you mentioned from 1 to 5.
Yes.
And noble gas data are categorized in a level from A to C, where A means no radioactive xenon in the sample, B, radioactive xenon in the sample at levels normal for that station, and C, radioactive xenon at levels not normal for that station. And the samples we reviewed here were purely noble gas samples. So the categorization is from A to C.
A to C.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What I would like to do, in light of the new information received from our technical experts, I suggest that we adjourn our plenary session for about half an hour for you to engage in consultations with your groups or bilateral consultations. You can also approach Atlantis for further clarification. And then we will reconvene at 4 o'clock.
Name group, please.
Colleagues from North America and Western Europe, and also P5, can we meet in one of the rooms behind?
Neo, maybe. Just see your seat.
Yeah.
We're still missing some representatives, but I would like those who are here take their seats. So we will resume our session. I think we had quite productive consultations, and a number of group meetings took place, and if I'm not mistaken, representatives of Atlantis and Equilibria met with a number of countries. And at this stage, if you have any interventions to make, please raise your country plates. Republic of Korea.
Thank you very much. After meeting with Atlantis and after meeting with our regional group, the Republic of Korea would just like to give our statement that we thus far find the radionuclide data to generally be inconclusive with a nuclear explosion. However, we have some very serious concerns about the seismic data, the waveform seismic data that we were shown by the International Data Center. Clearly, if you look at the pattern of P waves and S waves, seems to be inconsistent with an earthquake or other type of event. Indeed, it seems to be consistent with a man-made explosion. We understand that this event took place in an active mining zone, so that may be one possible conclusion, but at this point we would need to have further clarification from Atlantis on the nature of that event. And in addition, we would say if further clarification cannot be provided, you know, when the Executive Council commits and votes for carrying out an on-site inspection, they're not saying we're carrying out an on-site inspection because we think Atlantis is guilty, saying an on-site inspection because something needs to be clarified and we just need to investigate and get to the bottom of this. So we would very much appreciate an explanation for the seismic data. And additionally, we would note that the seismic data that we saw seems to be overall very much a consistent, almost a burst, rather than the ripple type effect you would see in mining-related explosions. So that would be very interesting for us to get clarification. Thank you very much.
Thank you for this useful intervention, and I call on the representatives of Atlantis to clarify or respond.
Okay, we would like to respond to the radionuclide data presented in the previous session. First, to clarify, the only reactor we have is the OPL, and to respond to a previous question from India, there was no large catastrophe at this reactor, and it was too far from the earthquake to be shut down. So it is still operating at normal capacity, though being monitored by our experts. Additionally, to respond to the new radionuclide data, these findings can be easily explained by an increase in the production of medical isotopes at our open pool light water reactor. And we have just circulated a media report that explains that we have increased the capacity of medical isotope production at the OPL in recent months, more than doubling it. This was done in response to the closure of a Canadian reactor and a threat to the supply of medical isotopes, or a threat to the supply of medical isotopes to the global medical community. The reactor in Canada that was shut down was producing molybdenum-99, the precursor isotope to technetium-99, which is most commonly used in radiotracer and medical procedures. And a global shortage of this isotope would drastically affect the global medical community. So the Atlantis Nuclear Science Technology Organization, months ago, increased the production of this isotope at OPL from 5.55 million doses a year to more than 10 million doses. All of this increase in medical isotope production was done in compliance with international regulatory bodies, and the IAEA was informed of this change. So the increase of this medical isotope creates xenon, which would be found in the atmosphere consistent with the data presented. And we would like to reiterate that the increase in production at this reactor was done to benefit the global medical community that was facing a drastic shortage and in full compliance with international regulatory bodies. And please see the press release we've just circulated for further information. Thank you.
Thank you. Kuba, do you have?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We really appreciate the immediate initial clarification of the event by the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty Organization, but we believe that these data are still ambiguous and do not help in defining whether the nature of the event was natural or not. Therefore, we believe it is imperative to request further information on the data on the triggering event. And we, again, reiterate our willingness in participating in the consultations with other state parties. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. During the break and afterwards, you'll have a chance to engage in consultations. You can approach all the state parties. I'll give the floor to France.
Monsieur le Président, j'aimerais souligner de nouveau l'ambiguïté des données, comme souligné ici par mes collègues du COBA. Mr. President, I would agree and concur with what has been said by my Cuban colleague regarding the ambiguity of the data. What's surprising to us is that only 9 IMS seismic stations detected the event. That's not a lot. And that the average magnitude was not too high. We would also request the technical secretariat to consider whether it's possible to provide us with hydroacoustic data. So kindly consider this request if any hydroacoustic data could be made available. Without this, it is very difficult to interpret the technical data provided so far. And France has also reverted back to its national analysts to request additional clarification from their side. And we would be happy to present this within the next couple of hours. Thank you.
Thank you for your request, and I'll refer this request to the Director General.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. I think at an earlier session of the Executive Council, the Technical Secretariat advised that it has not been in receipt of any hydronuclear data that might be related to this seismic event or to the radionuclide data. The point being that, of course, the hydroacoustic data is gathered from underwater sensors, which is why it's called the hydroacoustic data, and would typically give data about events taking place in the water, although there are times when the hydroacoustic stations will also detect seismic signals from events originating on land. But as I understand it from our experts, this is not one of those situations that there was no hydroacoustic data acquired in this time frame that has a correlation with either the seismic or the radionuclide data. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson.
Thank you, Director General. And I ask the representative of Thailand to intervene.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for giving us the floor. After carefully listening to the presentation made by the Secretariat, and also after further consultations in our regional grouping, we still feel that the data that has been provided is not sufficient for us to agree to an OSI in Atlantis. Until further data is provided that will convince us, we still think that it is not yet time to allow an OSI in Atlantis. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The United States, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Since we are taking the floor after lunch for the first time, we congratulate the Secretariat for the data presented to us when we begin this session. The United States, as we stated in our intervention this morning, is for making sure that no explosions take place, and also that the verification regime using all the instruments that the CTBTO has are used in their fullest extent to prevent untoward explosion and also related hazards. We believe that in the presentation of the data, there are some clarifications that we are looking for, and also we are making sure that we have our experts analyzing some of the data that we have, and will be provided by additional information from our experts. But we uphold the views expressed by our colleagues from France and our partner countries. So we will study the situation overnight, and we'll scrutinize and make conclusive contributions tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you. I call on the Democratic Republic of Congo to intervene.
Thank you, Chair. We appreciate the additional information provided by Atlantis, and this gives us a technical question that we're posing to the Secretariat. We understand that the reactor has been working more than usual in the last few months, but we don't have any information from the Technical Secretariat if this increase has been used to correct the algorithm and modify the baseline of what would be normal particulates. Because from our understanding, then the background information would have changed, and it would be important to have this correction in the algorithm. So we would like to know if this has taken place, or if we're looking at information that is not being analyzed with the information up to date. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I'll let Director General to respond to your question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. In response to the question from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the answer is in the affirmative, that the algorithm has indeed been adjusted to take account of the current circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you, Director General. I give the floor to Indonesia.
Hello, and thank you. Because Atlantis has been a member in good faith of the CTBTO for the last several decades, and asking for an OSI is inherently accusatory, and due to the fact that the data is inconclusive at this time, we do not wish to pursue an OSI at this time until we have more information. Thank you.
Thank you. Russian Federation.
So we would like to inquire more on the hydroacoustic station data. We expect that if there is any seismic activity, there will be some T-phase data that will be recorded by any hydroacoustic station that is around there. So could you shed some more light on this?
Yes, Director General will respond to your question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Well, as I said a little bit earlier, it's my understanding that no data from hydroacoustic stations, which would have meant specifically, in this case, the T-phase stations, which indeed respond better to earthquakes, that there is no such information available to the Secretariat. But in light of your question, perhaps I could undertake to inquire further of the hydroacoustic section in the International Monitoring System Division and respond tomorrow at the beginning of our session. Thank you.
Thank you, Director General. I give the floor to Vietnam, to Ukraine, followed by Lithuania, Japan, and India.
Mr. Chairman, the Western Europe Group delivered the statement on behalf of Ukraine, Republic of Georgia, and Azerbaijan. The rapidness with which it was delivered is proof of the effectiveness of the international monitoring system. However, after careful deliberation between our countries, we have come to the consensus that the radionuclide data provided is not enough proof of a nuclear test. The data is not conclusive in the sense that it does not show an abnormal pattern that coincides with the seismic event detected. We stand ready to provide Atlantis the support they may need in their respective effort. Thank you.
Do you want to reply or no? No. Okay. So, Lithuania, you have the floor.
Good afternoon. Lithuania notes with concern the clarification, the need for clarification regarding the nuclear data, and we agree with our esteemed colleagues who have noted that the data is not sufficient enough, that it can be ambiguous and inconclusive, and it is precisely for those reasons that Lithuania would request to proceed with an on-site inspection. We feel that opponents of Atlantis could use the information presented this morning against them in other forums, and we hope that an on-site inspection will serve to clarify and put to rest any notions that our good friends would conduct a nuclear test. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished representative of Lithuania. I call on Japan. Japan, do you wanted to know?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As mentioned in during the morning session, Japan has been a long-standing tradition of support to the CTBT, and it is thus relevant for us to ensure the appropriate use of the on-site inspections and not to set a wrong precedent, avoiding the use of such relevant verification measures with political agendas. There is insufficient information regarding the data provided in order to agree to an on-site inspection, and information provided so far is ambiguous. Therefore, at this point in time, we do not agree on on-site inspection. Also, we would like to mention the cost of the operation. That would be very expensive, and this is also something that we need to take into account. Thank you very much.
Thank you. India.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like Atlantis to comment on such thing that we read the statement about the increase of production of molybdenum-99, but there is nothing written here about the xenon, which was found in the air of the territory of the state. So maybe physicians would correct me if I'm wrong, but I am not sure that the xenon is the product of decay of molybdenum. So can Atlantis comment on that?
I'll give some time Atlantis to prepare, and now I give the floor to the Republic of Korea.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson. Several minutes ago, earlier in this session, the Republic of Korea asked for clarification from Atlantis regarding the seismic data and its consistency with a man-made event rather than a natural event. And Atlantis's response was dealing with radionuclide data rather than the seismic data. So when Atlantis has a chance, we'd very much appreciate clarification on that, and why, as we noted, the seismic waves look to be also somewhat inconsistent with a mining explosion. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your request. And so, Atlantis, you have two requests for clarification. And meanwhile, let me give the floor to Israel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dear Director General, Executive Council delegates, the State of Israel is supporting the CTBTO and its verification regime. We would like to express our support to the position contained in the North America and Western Europe intervention. We base our position on having an on-site inspection conducted in Atlantis. The Article 4, Section D, Paragraph 35, clearly states that OSI's only purpose is to gather facts, to clarify whether a nuclear weapon test actually happened, to prove that Atlantis respected the treaty. And finally, Chairman, Israel wants to remind that the MESA regional group has never functioned as such. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Before Atlantis responds, I will let Director General to respond on the xenon issue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Yes, when uranium or plutonium is fissioned and various fission products result, one of those products is xenon. And so you have that, and you have the molybdenum as another fission product, and depending upon the specifics of the medical isotope separation process, when the material is processed to recover the molybdenum, the xenon, which is a gas, escapes into the atmosphere. And so that results, accounts for its presence in the atmosphere when a medical isotope such as the molybdenum is being produced. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Director General, for this clarification. And Atlantis, you have the floor. No. United States, do you have a point of order? Okay. I'll let the United States to intervene.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. We thank the delegate of the State of Israel for his support for the North America and Western Europe position, but I'd like to clarify that the position of the group is not for on-site inspection, but for the support of the treaty and the promotion and protection of the rule of law. Thank you. We have not yet made a position clear. Thank you.
Just for clarification, this was not a point of order intervention, so in the future, please take this into account. Atlantis, please.
Thank you for the floor. So we have a number of points to respond to. To begin, we would like to thank our colleagues from Indonesia and Japan and reiterate their stance that the amount of data presented so far at these deliberations is inconclusive to move forward with an OSI. In response to South Korea's question, recently, during mining production at the Grove City site, we have changed the amount or the type of explosives we have been using for mining. These explosives have undergone extensive review, and we have informed the Technical Secretariat in accordance with Part 3, Paragraph 1 of the treaty of the change in our explosive devices. This most likely accounts for the difference in seismic data that South Korea has referred to. Additionally, in response to Lithuania's statement, and in general, Atlantis would like to make it known that we welcome, in accordance to Part 3, Paragraph 2 of the treaty, experts of other states' parties and the Technical Secretariat to Atlantis to gather data and undergo official tours of the OPL site and clarify the emissions of the xenon material that we recently provided details about. So this does not constitute an OSI, as an OSI is inherently accusatory, and the data presented so far in these deliberations is not strong enough to support an OSI. But as Atlantis is a transparent and happy supporter of the CTBT and dues-paying member, if I may add, we are happy to welcome experts to our country to gather data and observe the statements that we've made so far.
Thank you, Atlantis, for your suggestion. I'll let Equilibria to interfere.
Thank you. Honorable Chairman, dear friends and colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. First, we reiterate our profound gratitude for the strong support our proposal has received from many state parties thus far. We have carefully listened to all of your concerns, and we appreciate each and every one of them. Such comments reflect the intense interest from every delegation and show that those in this room take the issue as seriously as Equilibria does. We will address the most prevalent positions we have heard in the statements so far and reassure you that Equilibria's proposal is necessary, objective, and honest. Let me be absolutely clear. Equilibria's proposal in no way is intended to damage Atlantis's international reputation, nor is it politically motivated. Equilibria acknowledges and celebrates Atlantis for its long-standing, absolutely vital support of the CTBT. Both of our nations have enjoyed peaceful, prosperous ties of friendship and collaboration for decades. There is absolutely no political capital for Equilibria in conducting the OSI. The sole purpose of the inspection is to remove the uncertainty that has befallen this community and to produce incontrovertible evidence for what actually happened on May 21st. More importantly, since this is the first instance of a state party proposing an OSI in a situation of high uncertainty, when we make a decision about this precedent, do we want to act or sit by idly? Let me also highlight that Equilibria is a neutral country per our Constitution and is not affiliated with any military alliance. It is therefore absurd to suggest that we are politically motivated in our decision to file the request. At this point, we also want to be clear that we have not accused the Republic of Atlantis of any malign or illegal activity in relation to the seismic event, as the statements of other parties have suggested. Still, we cannot tolerate the shadow of doubt casting over the bright future of this organization. Secondly, once and for all, parties to the CTBT, per their ratification, have agreed to on-site inspections. This is a fact. There are safeguards in place to ensure that the subject country has representation and involvement throughout the entire process. This is not a violation of state sovereignty. This is a state keeping its word. Thirdly, Equilibria understands that many state parties have voiced their wish to wait for more conclusive data on the event in question before voting on an OSI. We deem it necessary to remind the Executive Council that in the spirit of the CTBT, on-site inspections are not intended to give confirmation of something we have already confirmed with IMS data. That would indeed be an absolute waste of time and resources. OSIs are fact-finding missions, intended to give certainty when all other data is ambiguous. As we have just heard, the radionucleotide and noble gas data, for which many states have waited, is ambiguous. The time to act is now. As per the treaty, in order to verify the natural cause of the event, an OSI is prescribed. The simple fact that a country has been a long-standing member of the organization and has cooperated thus far does not exempt it from an OSI or any other policy. In fact, the opposite is true. Long-standing support of the treaty is all the more reason for such a state party to openly accept an OSI as a matter of custom, not an accusation. Lastly, as the DPRK test of 2017 has shown, radionucleotide and noble gas indicators do not always tell the full story. They do not constitute conclusive evidence of an event in and of themselves, but when combined with all other available data, underscore the importance of conducting an OSI to remove any and all doubt related to this event. We look forward to the next stage of discussion, and we will endeavor to further clarify our position as needed. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished representative of Equilibria. I give the floor to the United Kingdom.
The United Kingdom believes that an on-site inspection is needed. The data provided by the Technical Secretariat causes some doubts about the nature of an event happened in Atlantis. So to verify and to make this issue fully clear, we believe that an OSI is needed. We also highlight that making the situation with the nature of an event clear is essential to be sure the global security is not endangered.
Thank you, United Kingdom. If there are no any other interventions, I suggest that we adjourn the meeting for 15 minutes to discuss the proposal of Atlantis to send a team of experts to study some ambiguous aspects. So if there are no objections, let's adjourn for 15 minutes. We'll reconvene at sharp at 5 o'clock. We will resume our session. Distinguished representatives, please take your seats. Let me remind you that we are short of time. So, before we begin, let me ask a clarification from Atlantis regarding your invitation. Could you please clarify who will cover the cost of the visit?
Yes, so regarding our proposal that we would do, I think the cost of the visit is, of course, not be covered by the state party countries, but Atlantis would be willing to cover the costs by also stating how much people, experts, can be invited to the country for the visit.
Thank you. I give the floor to the Russian Federation.
Уважаемый председатель, как упомянула делегация из Франции пораньше сегодня, мы хотим, чтобы был перевод официальных языков, но, очевидно, наши требования игнорировали. So we're just continuing with English. And I hope it is fine for our colleague to present some of the evidences our experts within our country have just been able to found at the podium. If no one objects to that, I would like to invite my colleague to present you with some evidences we were just received from our experts.
Well, according to the rules of procedure, it's the prerogative of the chair to invite an expert. So, yeah. Yes, since you have the expert, I invite him to present the finding.
Hello, esteemed colleagues of the Executive Council. As I stated yesterday in the first plenary session, the Russian Federation is committed to providing all available data from our vast national technical means to assist the decision-making ability of the Executive Council. So, I will be presenting to you some satellite images that our analysts have been working on since the May 21st event and some interpretations that they have made. So, here you'll see the site, the proposed inspection site, and in this corner of it, we've got several indicators of recent events. It indicates new buildings that you can see here, which could represent some sort of military barracks or construction offices or living quarters for anybody working at this site on something. And we've also got these dirt spoils around here that indicate recent excavation of the area that could be indications of large-scale mines for underground nuclear tests. And moving along, in this second photograph, further down, we've got what we propose to be the test site. You can see the array of potential tunnels and note some similarities to past test sites, most specifically the United States Nevada test site. And our final slide is mostly just pointing out that we know that there is an active uranium mine, and we just want to note the proximity to the proposed test site of that uranium mine, indicating that there is access to uranium. So, to conclude, it's interesting to note the structural similarities between our interpretations of a possible test site and the long-closed United States test site in Nevada. And furthermore, the supposed test by the Atlanteans would have been completed with a high degree of technical precision that our analysts are not convinced Atlantis could achieve. So from our perspective, it's becoming increasingly apparent that a nuclear test of some sort occurred in Atlantis, but it is not clear at all to us that Atlantis was acting alone in this test. Also, given Atlantis's proposal to support competence-building measures of scientists of their choosing, we would just like to note that the CTBTO does not have clear protocols on how these competence-building measures would take place in regards of which scientists go, who makes up the team, what kind of data is available to be collected. It's now the position of the Russian Federation to support an on-site inspection, to collect time-sensitive data, and to follow the protocols to verify the nature of the May 21st event. Thank you.
Thank you. I call the distinguished delegates to order. I thank the Russian Federation for providing this additional information. And Côte d'Ivoire, do you want to respond to the Russian Federation?
I have a question, Mr. Chairman. May we know the legal opinion of the Secretariat regarding using satellite imagery in such a situation?
So I refer this question to the legal counsel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. In this respect, in response to that question, I would like to bring your attention to paragraph 44 first of Article 4. It's on page 32 of the booklet. I'm simply bringing your attention to some of the phrases here. In line 3, towards the end of the line, we read any additional information. Then 1 to 2 more lines down, we read any clarification. Then 1 line down, we read any other information. So obviously the language here is broad and expansive, and it should cover satellite imagery. And as a side point, if you could please turn to page 21 of the booklet. Again, it's paragraph 11 of Article 4. And I read, each state party undertakes to cooperate with the organization and with other states parties in the improvement of the verification regime and in the examination of the verification potential of additional monitoring technologies such as electromagnetic pulse monitoring or satellite monitoring. So satellite monitoring is indeed envisaged by the treaty. That being the case, the conclusion is that satellite imagery here is permissible under the treaty. Thank you. Oh, by the way, there's another point of, just minor point of clarification. That is whether or not the Executive Council later thinks it appropriate to allow a visit to take place in the territory of Atlantis. That does not stop the clock from ticking, which means the Executive Council will still have to take a decision on the on-site inspection request unless Equilibria withdraws that request. Thank you.
Thank you for your important clarifications. I call on Venezuela to comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I want to commend our fellow from Russia for providing us with the technical evidence. But if I'm standing to be clear, the evidence they shown I think it is not enough evidence for us to accept for the on-site inspection, because they show us the Google picture or Google map, but I didn't see the GPS coordinates to make me believe that the picture are coming from the site which we want to inspect here. Thank you.
The Russian Federation, would you like to respond?
Yes, please. While I appreciate your concerns, these photos were expressly not from Google. These are from our private satellite array. Furthermore, the pins placed on it are placed precisely at the geographic locations marking the boundary of the proposed inspection area. Thank you.
Thank you. Democratic Republic of the Congo.
Thank you very much. Exactly, I want to repeat and re-emphasize on what has been said by the Venezuela representative. That's an open source, information. Besides that, in that presentation, it says that, the site is just 35 kilometers away of the uranium mines. That does not prove anything. You do not excavate the uranium from the mine to the nuclear test. Thank you.
Just the point of order, there are some artificialities involved in the simulation. So again, please accept the data that you're given. This is frozen simulation. This is not Google Earth images. This is the data that came from the Russian Federation. Okay? Thank you for playing along.
Thank you. Peru.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, honorable ladies and gentlemen. The previous statement of the Republic of Peru was considered to be as objective as it possible, to be fact-oriented, and our colleagues from non-aligned movement would agree that we, as the representatives of Peru, were as objective as it was possible, and still. During the conversations, during the information which was provided to us by the Secretariat, there are more questions than answers. And in case when such serious statements, such serious embarrassments from the Russian Federation appear, even now, we see that we should provide on-site inspection, and on behalf of Peru, we will try to promote this idea.
Thank you. May I ask you to keep your placards up until you are given the floor so that we record everyone? Italy, you have the floor.
Thank you for the chance that giving to me to speak today. After considering and looking the data from seismic and radionuclide data, we are from Italy, agree to do on-site inspection and send to OC team to investigate. Based on seismic data, we can see from the waveform there is probably non-natural event like earthquake, because earthquake is different from explosion. Explosion typically generate less shear wave energy than do most earthquake. Thank you.
Egypt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have one more question for the distinguished representative of Atlantis, and this will be if they are in the position to provide more explanation about the second source of xenon-131 isotopes in the mining region, as the ATM data previously indicated. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I will let Atlantis to intervene.
Thank you for the floor. So we would first like to respond to the new data presented by the Russian Federation. To begin, the removed earth that was highlighted in those pictures is a result of our new mining technologies that we referred to earlier in response to South Korea's question. And secondly, we would like to make a general statement about the importance of verifying all information presented here today. As we know, the Russian Federation has had a tumultuous relationship with accuracy, and we can't necessarily take this information at face value without questioning the motives behind why it is presented. Thank you.
Thank you. Distinguished representative of Lithuania.
Yes, good afternoon. Lithuania is often skeptical of proposals and imagery presented by the Russian Federation, but in response to that request, I would like to publicly state my support for that, the validity of that information. It's shocking to hear and see images of a potential test site that matches with uncanny resemblance the nuclear test site in the United States. I asked for clarification on why these sorts of tunnels and land masses are a part of Atlantis. Thank you.
Atlantis, would you like to respond or take your time? Okay. India?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I would like to make an official request to Atlantis, because if we look at the map where the main event occurred, we will understand that the event is quite far away from the reactor which is used for producing medical isotopes. But on the map, which was provided us by the technical secretary, we would clearly see that the radionuclide cloud was far away from the reactor and was nearby the probable main event site. So can representative of Atlantis comment on that? Thank you.
Thank you. Costa Rica?
Yes, good afternoon. Costa Rica continues to defer judgment on the request for an open inspection, mainly because the evidence in this matter is not clear and convincing, nor is it even at a preponderance, mere preponderance level. Costa Rica has asked for some clarification and additional information with regards to the state of emergency that has been announced in the area, especially with regards to the government providing relief. Are they accepting outside relief? Are they, what type of conditions are they experiencing in this, quote, emergency situation area? And if they could provide additional clarification and information on that, it would be helpful.
Thank you. China? Oh, sorry, Ghana, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Ghana welcomes the additional information provided by the Atlantis delegation regarding increase in isotope production. We would like to learn if Atlantis is a party to the joint statement on minimizing and eliminating the use of highly enriched uranium in civilian applications. The delegation of Ghana would like to state that former and current civilian nuclear activities of Atlantis present significant importance for the honorable member states in decision-making process. Atlantis is a loyal member of Global Non-Proliferation Regime, and they have additional protocol in force since 1997, which oversees the completeness and correctness of the data declared by the member country. In this case, an investigation of the country's IAEA safeguards record would enable honorable member states to see the whole picture more clearly. At this point, with the legal approval of the Atlantis government, we would like to see a cooperation between the IAEA and CTBTO in order to provide further information on the suspected country's civilian activities. We believe in the power of the additional protocol as the ultimate power to verify states' initial declarations and activities. Thank you.
I'll give the floor to the secretary to clarify about your request.
Yeah, we don't have, the CTBTO does not have a pre-existing arrangement with the IAEA. Whatever data you have from the IAEA is, of course, valid, but we do not have a relationship in this regard.
Yes, please.
So at this point, we would like to ask the delegation of Atlantis to release this information by their own will. Thank you.
Yeah. So while the Atlantis delegation is preparing its responses, I will give the floor to Iran.
Yes, thank you very much. This is probably good timing as our question is similarly related to that from our colleagues in Ghana. We first want to say that we express our understanding to Atlantis as this an on-site inspection may be very intrusive for them, and historically we have had issues with that in the past. We want to express our understanding for them. And we also want to thank them for providing the information regarding the increased production of molybdenum-99 at the Opal reactor and how that has helped fulfill the global demand for a key precursor medical isotope. So I have two questions for them that are similar to what the Ghana delegation asked, as Atlantis has recently planned to increase, nearly double from approximately 5 million to 10 million doses a year, the production at the Opal reactor. So we first want to ask if Atlantis is willing to provide information on the historical power of the reactor, as well as any other relevant information such as increased uranium production or flow into the facility, as more medical isotope production would require either a higher power output or increased fuel loading. And the second question, similarly to the Ghana delegation, has to deal with the fact that Atlantis is an esteemed signatory to the NPT as a non-nuclear weapon state and has implemented the additional protocol. So is our understanding that they have a comprehensive safeguards agreement with the IAEA. So we would ask that if they would provide any additional information that of the reactor information that is verified by the IAEA in terms of increased operations. So to summarize, two questions on what reactor relevant data can you provide us to verify this ambiguous radionuclide data, and if you can further clarify if this information is verified by the IAEA. Thank you.
Thank you. The United States has the floor, followed by Pakistan and Cuba.
Well, Mr. Chairperson, thank you very much for giving me the floor. Well, the USA always welcomes additional monitoring technologies provided at the plenary sessions. But personally, I feel very surprised that at such short notice, the images have been presented. And just, it is highly likely that such images could have been fabricated. And it's very highly likely that the Russian Federation is pursuing some interest to gain more support from Western countries. Well, let us take this point also into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Pakistan.
Point of procedure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. As you all may know, Pakistan is a great supporter of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. Since 2018, when it signed and ratified the CTBT, the NPT gave up its nuclear program and became a world-leading advocate for disarmament, arms control, and non-proliferation. Pakistan strongly condemns nuclear testing. In light of recently received data, which seems suspicious for Pakistan, we believe that we will support the on-site inspection because Pakistan strongly believes in this verification mechanism. We also think that it is of everybody's interest to understand what has happened in this particular event in the land of Atlantis. Pakistan Zindabad. Thank you.
Thank you. Cuba.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for giving me the floor. We believe that the satellite imageries were not objective and we do not believe that these are reliable evidences for a non-site inspection request. Therefore, we are not yet in the position to approve an OSI request. Thank you very much.
Point of procedure, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Okay. Please have the...
Thank you. In accordance with Rule 17 of the Rules of Procedure, we would like to motion to adjourn debate to gather the information relevant to answer questions in regards to the data we provide to the International Atomic Energy Agency, the humanitarian crisis, and seismic activity.
So according to the rules, two contestants speak in favor, two opposing, and then it will be ruled. Just a second.
So in response to your proposal, we can have two countries speaking in favor and two against, and then we can put your motion to vote. Are there
any countries in favor?
Please.
I think more information would be useful, not only for those countries who are in favor of the OSI, but also, on the other hand, for those who are opposed it. So we support the motion. Thank you.
Costa Rica would second that. Additional information is very critical to this.
Any countries opposing the motion? If not, I'll...
Yeah, India opposes the motion. We think that the information which was provided by the technical secretariat and in addition Russian Federation is critical enough to understand that the ambiguous event took place in the land of Atlantis, and the on-site inspection is necessary to solve this ambiguous event and prove the goodwill of Atlantis, and that they haven't violated the CTBT which they signed in the past.
Thank you. Germany, do you also object to the motion?
We want to have more information. This is what we wanted.
So I'll put the motion to vote.
So just to clarify, this is the motion to adjourn the debate, adjourned until day 3. So we're now finishing day 2 of the simulation, or let's say day 4. Day 3 will be overnight, and day 4 you will convene tomorrow at 10 a.m. So if you would like to, those in favor of adjourning the debate and reconvening at 10 a.m., please raise your country placards.
So it seems
those against?
It seems that we have overwhelming majority in favor of the Atlantis motion, right? So on that, I would like to adjourn our meeting, and before we leave, we'll hear from the legal counsel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. This has really nothing to do with voting on the motion. Just a small point of clarification with regard to the IAEA. Please turn to page 4 of the booklet. In paragraph 8 of Article 2, starting from line 3, through cooperative arrangements with other international organizations, such as the International Atomic Energy Agency. So it is possible in the future for the CTBTO to enter into cooperative arrangements with the IAEA, but for the sake of this simulation, as explained by my colleague, we don't have such an arrangement. Thank you.
Thank you. So the meeting is adjourned. See you tomorrow. And I strongly